Howdy, it's Jim Arado, and this is late October 2022. We're in Kennesaw, Georgia, at the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History. And it notes on the website that it is a Smithsonian affiliate. I think it was maybe $10 each to go here. It wasn't that expensive. This was, I believe, our third visit here. I like this museum a lot. I like this area a lot, and check out, they're big on relics here. Shackles, slave receipt, this is pretty heavy stuff. And they have an impressive collection of Civil War relics and train-related relics also. And I really like this museum, and it's in a great area. If you're doing your Civil War pilgrimage to the Atlanta area, you've got Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield, and just a stone's throw away from here. And you got Marietta. There's so many wonderful, just beautiful towns with a lot of history right in this area. It's a Gone with the Wind museum, and many other places to see relating to Sherman's March to the Sea, Atlanta, the Civil War in northern Georgia. We would stop at Tunnel Hill as we left the area. There's a great tour you can do there. I'll put up a video of that later. But this area is just rich with history. And this museum is just a wonderful museum. And as you can see, it's not crowded. It's a big museum with a lot going on, and there were maybe a dozen other people there while we were here. Oh, and they have these interactive exhibits. Check this out.
My name's Lucius Anderson, and I'm from Sugar Valley, Georgia. And I wish I was in Sugar Valley right now. This is my 10th day out here in the middle of nowhere, guarding this railroad track, making sure no Yankees come and tear it up. I know this is an important job, because General Johnson's army needs the supplies that come up this track from Atlanta. But this is the most boring thing I've done in all my life. I'm worried about my farm and my family. They need taken care of. I guess if the Yankees are going to be riding down here destroying and burning things, well, somebody's got to be here to sound the alarm and try and stop them. There's 5 of us out here, and I'm the only one who's a member of the militia, so I'm in charge. I got a promotion, Corporal Lucius Anderson. 2 of the men are just kids, couldn't be more than 15. The other 2 men are, well, as old as my granddaddy. Cap said they're using a lot of boys and older men to guard the railroad track, so General Johnston can keep as many regular fighting men as possible.
Yeah, and you had, I guess, the little mannequin fellow Confederate telling his story. And again, just, lots of relics, lots of information, specifically about Sherman's March to the Sea. A little information there on Sherman's neckties. And I did ask someone working there if that was an authentic Sherman necktie, and they let me know that it was not. It's still a pretty cool display. There's some time period clothes there too. This museum, again, it kind of has an impressive Civil War display. Yeah, an actual battle flag. Those always give me goosebumps. You know they were there, and you know what they meant. And then you had kind of the train section of the museum also. And then as you kind of go along, of course, the main event is getting to see the general from the Great Locomotive Chase during the Civil War. I love the little medical displays. And then, as you kind of go through the museum, it gets a little more railroad oriented, and it had, some displays about the business offices and the working offices relating to the railroad. It became much more railroad specific. They've got these great trains here. Yeah, those are actually I think they're dollhouse scale. I think they're 1/12 scale. And they're pretty darn impressive. I mean, I just enjoyed looking at them. This particular one, this Pullman car, had a a mirror at the top so you could sort of look at the interior detail. And I thought that was pretty neat. And of course, Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert Todd Lincoln, would have an association with them. I've put up another video about Robert Todd Lincoln's home in Vermont, and there's a little info about him and trains. He did very well for himself afterwards. I'm sure his last name helped him, but a very productive, impressive fellow in his own right. And they've kind of got this, I think, kind of displayed out like a, almost like a train garage there. I thought that was kind of neat. But yeah, the General, much more on the General as we keep going on this tour. The General's just an impressive train. And of course, it was, you had some Yankees go down and try to swipe it. Actually, from this area, they did pretty good, but they didn't quite succeed. In fact, several of them were hanged and executed, and later on they would receive medals of honor, some of them. Posthumously, some of them. But, yeah, they had this really cool little area where if you were a kid or an adult, you could make like a rubbing of some of the train-related items. I thought that was pretty neat. I didn't do this. I usually do this sort of thing myself, but those items were kind of bigger. And let me read to you just a little bit from one of the little signs about the Confederate statues here. It's Rich's Centennial Exhibition. These statues of Confederate generals were commissioned by Rich's department store in Atlanta to commemorate the 1961 centennial of the Civil War. Made of moldable plastic called celastic, the originally all-white statues were first exhibited at Rich's alongside Civil War-related artifacts. Rich's exhibition was part of a series of events that occurred throughout the state during the 1960s, memorializing, commemorating, and celebrating the Confederacy and the Civil War. Often these events made public the use of Confederate symbols. At the same time, segregationists used Confederate emblems to rally their supporters and demonstrate their opposition to the civil rights movement. And then, yeah, we're kind of in a little train factory display here, and I'm going to push another button that's going to tell us a little more info on the trains.
A new Glover steam locomotive begins with a blueprint drawn to the customer's exact specifications by Glover's engineering department. Blueprints are made of the entire locomotive from different angles. Additional blueprints are drawn for each of the hundreds of parts that go into making a steam engine. These diagrams provide the basic roadmap for building the locomotive. Next, wooden replicas, called patterns, are made for each part. The individual patterns will be packed into special sand and then carefully lifted out to create molds. The molds are moved to the foundry, where molten steel is poured into them to make a metal casting. The Glover Machine Works produced just about every single part they needed, except for boilers, which they purchased separately. They also bought headlights, marker lamps, gauges, and whistles from other companies. After the parts are cast, they go to the machine shop, where the finishing touches are done. Holes are drilled, rough edges and burrs are removed, and the parts are ground and milled down to the precise measurements written on the blueprints. The next and final stop is the erecting area. Here, the parts are brought to the shop floor and arranged neatly in rows and piles. The assembly process takes anywhere from 900 hours to 3,000 hours, depending on the size and complexity of the engine. The work begins with the overhead crane gently lowering the left and right sides of the frame onto heavy-duty jacks. The halves are loosely bolted together along with other structural braces, cross ties, and yokes. The assembly is checked frequently for proper leveling and alignment before the bolts are firmly tightened. The cylinders are secured next, and again the alignment is checked. The main frame and cylinders must be precisely aligned if the drive wheels and all other elements of the drive mechanism are to run true. Brake cylinders and springs are bolted into place. Then the boiler and firebox are lowered onto the frame by the overhead crane. The crane is then attached to the frame and lifts it up. The drive wheels and truck wheels, mounted on their axles, are rolled into position and the locomotive body is lowered onto the wheel. Now it's time to install the cab, pistons, and connecting rods, steam pipe connections, smokestack, an insulating jacket around the boiler, and literally hundreds of other essential details. If the design calls for a saddle tank, that's a water supply tank mounted over the boiler instead of in a tender car. This is the time to lower the saddle tank into place. Finally, lights and gauges are installed and last-minute pipe and steam connections are secured. The bell and whistle are mounted, the engine is painted, and a brand new Glover locomotive is ready to go to work.
Yeah, so like I said, you kind of go through the museum. There's kind of a Civil War section, then kind of a train/Civil War section. It becomes a little more train related. There's a whole little back area too, and they do have some model trains set up there. I do like that sort of thing. They do have this little back area, kind of a play area for kids, and they had some displays back here too. I didn't want to be the weird adult filming where kids were playing, but they have a very nice play area, and I saw a lot of kids back there, a lot of families having a good time. A few, a lot for the day. And a couple of other little models here, and there's the General, and pretty much the rest of the museum is kind of general focused. The General and the Great Locomotive Chase, Andrews Raiders, it's kind of a big deal and something fun to read up on if you're into Civil War history. And this museum's a great spot to start. And as we'll see here in just a few seconds, they even have kind of a model up above us of the trains. And yes, I wanted to watch that from a couple of different angles. But this is really cool. Right at the end of your tour of the museum, you kind of walk through this little area, and there is the real General. And that's the real deal. The other train that chased the General, the Texas, I believe that one's at the Atlanta Civil War Museum. I haven't been to that one yet. But yeah, and they've also got this little walking area where you can kind of go up and take a look down on the General. And I just think that's really neat. Of course, I think the plot to steal the General, a lot of stuff happened right out of Kennesaw, and there's a museum right in Kennesaw, like downtown Kennesaw, about it too. And here's some collectibles made relating to the General and the Great Locomotive Chase. And yeah, when I got home, I actually had to look for one of those little model kits. I wanted one of those little model kits of the General, so I had to purchase one of those, and I'm totally gonna build it just because I think it's neat. But yeah, the General, that's definitely a rabbit hole to go down, and like I said, I'm gonna put up another video of our visit to Tunnel Hill, where they cover quite a bit about the General. We also saw a statue earlier of John Bell Hood. His leg is buried at Tunnel Hill. And just because I like them, here's one of those penny machines. Pressing a penny. Yeah, mine got stuck in there, but there was a nice lady working there, and she made sure I got my penny. But I love these souvenir penny machines. But yeah, that was the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History in Kennesaw, Georgia.